Hello everybody, just want to introduce you to John Deere maintenance. That was John Deere 738, X738. It's a damn nice tractor, very expensive, but it's worth it. So far I have nothing to worry about so far. I just did a 50-hour maintenance on this tractor and I have some videos going to follow. But I just want to let you know that this maintenance program that I did on this tractor is my own maintenance program, so it's not probably the best, it's probably not the worst, but it's just out there for you to take a look at and give you some of my ideas how I do things on these tractors, on this tractor. And I've had John Deere's basically all my life, and they last 15-20 years, so you take care of them, you can make them last a long time. And I just rebuilt the deck, the blower, and I've gone through the 50-hour maintenance on this, draining all the oil. It's a task, but you save a lot of money not taking it to the dealer. So as long as you guys know these are my ideas, and not necessarily the perfect thing to do, but it's what I did. So with that, John Deere maintenance, whatever it takes to get it done. My idea. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this blower for the tractor. I just kind of put it in my vise with using the arm that supports off the deck, and it holds it up there pretty good. So I'm going to take all the bolts out, take the plastic off, and see where we're at. This thing's probably full of stuff because look at all the crud in there. So I'm going to get all that out and clean it all up. It's a John Deere blower, so hopefully I can get it apart and just put it over there with my deck, store it away, and then I don't have to worry about it until the spring. But now that I got the garage all heated up, I might as well take this thing apart. So we'll see what's going to happen next, step by step. There's what it looks like inside. Basically the belt just comes through these two pulleys off the deck, comes around here and just spins the blower. All this does is engage tension on the belts, and they just kind of flow through. Looks like it's in pretty good shape. Everything looks like it's put together good, so I'm going to go ahead and take this side of the blower off and see what the pulley looks like and see what the bearings look like. It takes a little while to get it apart. There's a whole bunch of 10mm screw bolts coming in here. They all come around the bottom all the way through here. Then there's a couple bolts you got to take off over here, and then there's bolts you got to take off here. And the bolts are all plow bolts, so you can hold them from the inside, 10mm. And then actually this outside guard is held on with a zip strip and one bolt right here. So, and then the outside guard comes off with these little push-on clips. You push them in the hole and shove the top in, and keeps it locked in. So I'm ready to take the back side off now. Let's see what happens. Okay, once I pop this cover off, there is a dowel here and a dowel here that kind of holds it together. You just got to pop it apart with a screwdriver. But when you take it apart, it's loaded with stuff. It's all covered with all kinds of crud. It's all dirty and stuff to stuff. So we're going to clean that all up. And the blade is probably throwing off balance because all this stuff stuck to it. So I'm going to take it apart, clean it up. It's all packed with stuff. You don't ever be able to clean that if you're even with a power washer. You can't get that off unless you clean it all apart. Take it apart. It's not a big deal. I'm going to pull it apart and check the bearing inside there. There's got to be a bearing holding that together. So that's the next step. But it sure does work easy when you got it hanging here by this vise, because it basically holds it in the air while you can work. Makes it easier. Very easy to work on. So let's see what the next step is. There's a 13mm bolt that holds this on. Take this bolt off. It's got a washer cap, and then this comes right off here. You got to be careful. There's a key in there. Don't lose the key. But look at the stuff in here. All the crud. That's got to be all cleaned up. Make sure you don't lose that key. The key is right there. easy to come out of there. So I'm going to take it out now. So I'll put it on the side so I don't lose it, because that you lose that, this won't spin. So I'll put that over there, put that key in the spot where we don't lose it. Then this, I'll show you on this side. Once you get that off, you can actually take this belt loose, no big deal. This comes right out of here, look at that. There's the shaft and everything right there. This all sits together. This also has a key. This pulley's on here, so make sure you put the key back in. But that all comes out. There's 2 bearings in there, and they look dry, so I'm gonna check them out, see what the deal is with that. I don't want to mess nothing up, but we're gonna pack these bearings and see what we got to do to get those bearings out. Oh, there they go. They pop right out of there. So there they are. There's a spacer. So there's bearings are in there. So, oh yeah, I've greased these before. So they got grease in them still, but you got to pack these. See, they're getting ready to burn up. I mean, they won't burn up because they definitely got grease. But the 2 bearings got the seals off to the inside. I'll clean them all up and show you exactly what I mean. Get them all apart. And that bearing comes right out of there too, I think. It should come out, but we'll get it out. Okay, in order to get all the debris out of this area in here, it's stuffed in because of the circulation motion. You got to take these bolts out here and here. There's 3 bolts. This will come out of here. See, all this comes out of here, and then all this debris is all packed in here. You can't get that out unless you basically take that apart. It's the only way to get it out. And then you just take a scraper. It's all caught up in here. Just take a scraper, get all this out. I mean, I don't think this will cause you any trouble, but knowing that it's in there, all this is caught up in here, it just adds to the friction, and then this thing won't run correctly. You got to get all this out. All this debris comes out of here. It makes it smooth. This is a wear plate. You can put this back in afterwards, clean it off. This goes back in here, and then it'll be that's just like a friction plate. And then I take a vacuum and vacuum all this out of here. That's the best way to clean it. Okay, now that I've cleaned it up, basically what this looks like, it's 2 bearings right next to each other, and like I expected, there's no way to grease them from the outside. It's just a one-time deal. They're sealed bearings, so when you put them together, there's no way to grease it. So what I did in this situation is after I took it all apart, cleaned all the parts, here's the blade, I cleaned it all up, got all the grass out of it. There's 2 bearings in there just like that with a spacer in between. What I did is I took off the seals on the inside and packed them with grease. So the bearings are packed, and I'm going to pack the area between the 2 bearings with grease, and that'll always feed grease into the bearings when it gets hot in the summertime. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so these are the bearings. Now about 2 months ago I took this apart because it was making noise, and I found that these bearings were dry, so I took out the seal on this side. So now I packed them with grease, and they stayed pretty good with grease, and they didn't have a problem, but I wanted to inspect it and show you what I did. So basically the bearing had, both sides were like this with a seal. I took the seal out, so now I have a bearing, a spacer, and a bearing like this. And both the insides, the seal's gone, which is trapped inside of here. It can't get any dirt to it or water. So basically it's sealed anyway through the races. So what I did is I packed that area with grease, and I fill it up with grease in between this space. So this space in between here is packed with grease. So my bearings always have grease, even when it gets hot and the grease starts to break down, it still lays in the bottom of that area in the middle. Between that spacer and this spacer, there's a cavity, and I put grease in there, so it stays in there pretty good. So we're going to do that again. So basically I reinstalled the bearing on this side, pushed it all the way into the spacer. It's in the middle of this bushing. so it can't go that way anymore. That's where the blade goes on this side, the fan blade. And on the other side, I put the spacer in onto the shaft, put the other bearing on backward this way so the seal is on this side, no seal on this side, put the spacer on, so the spacer's on, the seal on this side will keep the water from going in, that's got a spacer. Then I just take the shaft, the spacer's in between here, the bearing's here, and I'll put this on the bearing, push this shaft in, and I'm actually packing grease in between and pushing grease in between the two bearings, so it's pressurized. And I push it as hard as I can so that bearing's all the way in there. And when we go on the other side, you'll see that it actually pushed out grease right out on in this area. That's the grease that's overabundance of grease that's on, shoved through the key. So now the bearing is packed in between, and the bearing is definitely going to last the whole season, no problem. So there's excess grease, so in between the two bearings it's completely packed with grease, and too much is better than not enough. So as the bearing grease breaks down, it'll always have a new area of grease to get, so that's good to go. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, don't forget to install this spacer. This spacer goes on, it's got plenty of grease on it. There's a key in here that could fall out, so you got to make sure you put that key in. It's pretty tight in there, and this is part of the fan blade. And then this fan, I cleaned it up really pretty good. I mean, it gets dirty immediately when you start putting grass through this thing. But this way, you hold this on this side, hold the pulley, and then line up the key. The key came right out. See, that's not good. You got to make sure that key is in there. You got to make sure that key is lined up to that shaft. There it goes. See, the key's in, shaft's on, it's all the way in. It can't move, it's on the key. And then you tighten it down with a bolt. That's what you have to do. So then that bearings, those two bearings support the fan blade and the pulley. So it gets a lot of tension on that. Well, that's good. Now it spins good. The keys are both in because you can twist the hold on to the pulley, twist the blade. You know it's on there good, and then you can tighten it back up. That's the main thing. Make sure that that's tight, because you don't want this coming off inside the plastic housing, because it'll screw up the blade and it'll screw up the housing for sure, because it'll catch. So now that you have a key in here, the shaft can't turn, and you can tighten this up pretty good just by holding this and holding this. Just tighten it right up. Now you're good to go. And you need to know this is a 15mm socket, so that's good. So here we are, we're good to go. You can also do, just for extra tightness, you put a hammer right here. It'll lock this in place like this, and then you can really tighten this up. So there you go, good to go. It's really tight and easy turns, and now we can start putting it together. I left this loose because there's a couple of grooves in here for the plow bolt can ride on, so when I get the other cover on, it can line everything all up, make sure that this is tight seam, all the way tight. It's all the way tight up into these two places here. You put all the bolts in, all this has got to be clean good, and then that way you know that this fan blade is definitely in, and you definitely got grease, but there's no grease fitting on here. I don't know why John Deere doesn't give you a grease fitting, but they don't. So that's how it goes. We should be good to go for another season. Don't forget, having this on this vise, just using the actual support bracket that holds it in place when you're on the tractor, is a good working spot. So I'm going to finish cleaning up these parts real good, make sure all this is dusted down, because all these bolts are important, and this thing, it's all plastic, so it all holds together pretty good with all the screws in place. So this side's good, you can see, pulley's good, Spins good. There's a belt guard right here. Keep the belt from popping off when this gets loose. You got to loosen this up in order to put the belt on. I'm going to do that now. You could have put the belt on with a pulley, but this gives you extra stuff to worry about. So I'm going to put it back on, make sure that's tight, and we're good to go. It's not a big deal, but I bought a tube of silicone for the deck itself to cover up some holes. So I thought I'd just fill in this area here. This is a gap that all when that grass is spinning around in here, it shoves it down in here, stuffs this area full of grass. So I put a little silicone in there, coming up here, and then right in this area here, it looks like it's like a speed bump. It's just an area where this is sitting on top of the plate. So I just put a little silicone in there and made like a ramp. So when the grass is coming around, it doesn't catch on these bumps. There's 2 bumps here where these bolts are, and they're on the other part, on the other half too. But I just put a little silicone in this groove here. So when the grass is spinning around, it just kind of blows up over that. Nothing you have to do. I covered up this a little bit here so that it wouldn't rust out, because this does get wet. And I put a hose in here and blast this, get this dirty during, I get it cleaned out when I'm running it during the summer. So it gets a lot of abuse. And those bearings are pad good, so I'm good with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the cover on and go to the next step. Okay, it looks like it might be hard to do, but once you get all these screws, they look like wood screws, but they're not. There's like 10 of them all around the outside pushing the cover together. These 2 dowel pins up here push together. Then these bolts are a little easy. You can get to these, just put your hand in here and you can tighten these up from outside here with a 10 millimeter and tighten these up here. You can get to these from up here. You reach up here, put the bolt in, put these in. The ones down here, they all go in. There's 2 down here at the bottom, 1 right here that comes out right here. Over here there's a bolt. You tighten this one up, you just put your hand in here, tighten it all up. This is all cleaned up. This is the pin that locates it when it goes into home position. So you just make sure that the fan spins easy. Should be good. Bearings are good. It's ready for the outside covers. So we'll put those on next. Those are just basically protect your fingers from getting caught in the fan. But the integrity of the machine's all put together. Everything's on this one plate, so everything's good. So if you put the belt up like this, it just runs real smooth. So that's just the tension to keep the belt tight. Once this belt's on the main deck pulley, this runs pretty good. And all this is tight. So if you want, you can. I'll put the covers on and take one more quick video. Okay, there it is, all back together. Nice and clean. Ready to go back on the tractor in the spring. Now I did do a couple things. I added a extra bolt right here because this is floppy. This falls down inside and catches on this spring that releases this. So I put a bolt right here. And I also added a bolt right here. This sits here. And it flaps and gets in the way of the belt. So I just put a bolt and a wing nut on it. So this is all nice and clean inside. And everything looks good. I did do a little silicone inside. Filled up a couple of those little holes down there. So the grass doesn't catch in there. It blows right down out because this is the output right here. And the grass comes flying through here. So it just gets a little area that's doesn't let it do that. So it's nice and clean. It's nice and clean inside, so we're good to go. So here's the John Deere number. I can't believe this thing costs like $900 with the chute, but it's a lot of parts to it. But with the bearings not being able to grease, now that I feel good about the grease being inside, I'm good with it. So I'm ready to put it in storage for a couple months. I'm not worried about it. I'm ready to go in the spring. So don't forget these 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 down here. This is for that, just a wear plate inside there to keep the plastic from wearing out. You got to make sure that's straight. And then all your bolts around here. So but once you get these bolts here, this one, this one, this one, this one, and there's a couple down here in the bottom. once you get those in, this thing pretty much goes together, and you can just put all the bolts back in, and you're ready to go. Here it is, John Deere blower. So we're ready to go. We're going to put it right back on the deck, put the deck back in the shed for the winter. So I just hung this right here so it don't get lost. And then